When you're walking into a Las Vegas casino, or any casino for that matter, and you're with someone who plays craps, and you walk by the craps table, they'll inevitably tell you that their secret strategy is the best strategy in craps. I've had this happen to me. I'm guilty of this, but one thing that is underlying in all of these strategies, no matter what the approach is people will tell you that you need to max the odds. I'm gonna tell you my sacred crab strategy in a second, the one with over 5 million dice rolls. But before we do that, and this is not a craps explainer video, I just wanna be sure that you're able to follow along. So here's a quick 30-second overview of craps. In craps, the table starts empty. You put your money on the pass line, and if you roll a 7 or 11 right away, you win. If you roll a 2, 3, or 12, you lose. If you roll anything else, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, that becomes the point. Sounds complicated, but once the point is established, the whole game of craps is just rolling that number before you roll a 7. Everything else on the craps board is optional bets or noise, but the fundamental goal in craps is to roll the point before a 7. If you roll a 7 first, you lose. If you roll the point first, you win. Now, let's say you come out and you roll a 4. So you have to roll a 4 before a 7. You may be thinking to yourself, well, that's unfair and that's really bad luck. But you get compensated in odds. So you're able to put a bet behind your pass line bet. With a 4, let's call it $30. And if a 4 hits before a 7, you actually win $60. You get 2 to 1 on that bet behind the 4 to be compensated for the odds. So when people say they maximize the odds, it means that they're playing behind the bet because that's what Vegas gives you to even the odds of you rolling this number before a 7. If you roll a 5, it's 3 to 2. And if you roll a 6, it's 6 to 5. So of course you get better odds behind your bet if you're trying to get a 4 before you get a 7. Let's get into my particular strategy here where you just go all in on maximizing the odds. So let's say the point is still on 4, like from that first example. I'm gonna put money on the come bet. The come bet acts like a second craps bet. So if the next roll is a 5, that comeback goes to a 5, I maximize the odds, and now if a 4 or a 5 hits before a 7, I get paid with odds. So basically I'm playing 2 craps games at once before the 7 rolls. Then I'd put another bet on the come line, and if an 8 gets rolled, now I wanna roll an 8 before the 7. So now if a 4, 5, and 8 get rolled before the 7, I win, but if a 7 gets rolled at all at any time, I'm going to lose all 3 of those bets. So it's a highly levered, very aggressive way to play craps, but for each one of these, you're maximizing the odds, which is what a lot of people will say is the key to winning in craps. If you want to hear more about this crap strategy or you're getting confused, there are craps explainer videos, or leave in the comments that you want me to explain this a little bit more, and I am more than happy to. Okay, now the process. Mr. Beast, if he were doing this, would fly to Vegas and spend 2 weeks awake at the craps tables until he got to the bottom of whether he was up or down. But I don't have the time or the money to do that, so I needed a different way. And enter Twitter, where I was scrolling on Twitter, and everyone on Twitter, all these programmers are talking about how ChatGPT is revolutionizing the coding game. Coding is gonna get so simple now with ChatGPT, and you don't even have to be a programmer and it'll write code for you. And I thought, I've always wanted to know if this strategy is successful, so why don't we turn to ChatGPT and see if they'll write code. Spoiler alert, this was a horrendous idea and one of the reasons I haven't posted in weeks. So I started on ChatGPT and I asked them to write simple code. Can you just do it if I bet 1 pass line and max the odds? And of course, ChatGPT was able to, and this was really cool, but I didn't want to do a video about this because that's not how I play craps. It's not super complicated and it wasn't that interesting. So I gave ChatGPT a list of very specific instructions for this crap strategy. If this number's rolled, then put the money on the come bet. If the come bet hits, then you get this. If not, then whatever. And you get the point, all of these different scenarios. And ChatGPT gave me back something really discouraging early on, which is, this is a complicated script and blah, blah, blah. Once I got that back from ChatGPT, I knew that I was not going to get the full script that I needed, but I was hopeful that ChatGPT got me 95% of the way there. And with my very, very, very basic Python knowledge, I'd be able to like connect the dots. That didn't happen. So ChatGPT gave me something back and then I was starting to correct it and I was running tests on it. And then no hyperbole, 30 hours later, after pretty much demolishing the ChatGPT script, I was able to come up with something that worked. The finished program is built on scenarios for every case that could happen in this crap strategy. hitting a come point and then losing, hitting a point, then moving your come bet to the actual point, all of these complicated edge scenarios that took a while to debug and then plug into my program. And ultimately you're prompted with how many series do you want to run? And a series is when a point is opened up and then you either crap out or you hit that point. And how much you want your starting balance to be. And then it goes through a big simulation of all this and it spits out how much you were up at the max, what you were down at the most, where you finished and what your balance was, and how many series you ran. In the beginning, I thought that my goal was to run 5 million series, because if you run 5 million series at once, then you would get the true value of craps. But what I started to see was there was really volatile stuff going on. And after you get to 100,000 simulations, things are just going haywire. So instead, I realized there's no way that that's a realistic number. What would be more fun to do would be to run simulations for an amount of series that you might play when you're in Vegas, so you can see whether you would end up or down. And so I figured 50 series was probably a pretty good number for this. This would mean you're playing craps for a couple hours, points are hit, and overall it's a good session of craps. The constraints here are you're playing a $10 pass bet. So if a 4 is rolled, you could put $30 behind it. If a 5 is rolled, you could put $40 behind it. And a 6 is rolled, you could put $50 behind it. And all of these odds bets would end up paying you $60. So total that you could lose if your odds are maxed out would be $40 if a 4 is rolled, $50 if a 5 rolled, $60 if a 6 is rolled, but then your payout if these points hit are $70 across the board. And I wouldn't worry too much about the math. Like I said earlier, if you're interested in this, I will be happy to do another video on it. But let's get into the results. If you play $10 on the pass line and you play 50 series and you do this 50,000 times, your average return would be you'd be down $61. Now the median here is actually down $150, which means if you think about it, there are some long tail scenarios in which you win a lot of money that brings the average up versus the median, which is where you think you would end up, like number 25,000 is. And in that case, this person had lost $150. What's interesting here is the most you would win in 50 series is $6,610, and the most you'd lose is $3,720. Now, what's most interesting is the top 25 results actually have you winning $700. Whereas the bottom 25% actually have you losing $910. To me, I have a couple takeaways. This was better than expected. So I thought that if you sat there and played 50 series where you're putting up hundreds of dollars on the table during a series potentially at once, that you could lose a ton of money. But the fact that you're in between being down $910 or up $700 feels like less crazy than I would have expected. In fact, I bet that this scenario is much better than if you were to sit at blackjack for a couple hours and play hundreds and hundreds of hands. I also think that it's ridiculous that in 50 series, someone could get so hot that they win $6,000. I mean, that's like a ton of rolls that are going on. On the flip side, 3,000 being the absolute bottom makes sense. It means you're, betting and betting and betting, and then all of a sudden you crap out. So for me, I think that this was really cool. It skews negative. Like the meat of the curve here is slightly negative, but the long tail is really positive. So it doesn't feel like you're going into a casino to just lose a ton of money if you're playing this strategy. It means that you're going for this type of distribution where, maybe 45% or 40% of things are positive and you end in the money. But if you do end in the money, then it could be really big. Would I play this crap strategy? Absolutely. I think that this is a blast to play, a ton of action on the table, and this simulation isn't taking any sort of thing into account except for just 50 series. But if you told yourself you were going to walk away on a winning roll, then maybe that changes the results quite a bit. Or if you wanted to do random here in between 15 and 50, you could see how much this would pay back. So I'm going to actually leave the code for you, and it's going to be linked on my website in the description here. You can take this code and you can put it into an emulator and you can do whatever you want with it. So hopefully, I wasn't able to find any other stuff like this online. So hopefully this saves someone a ton of time in the future where you're able to go play with this and use this as a springboard. I would say thank you, ChatGPT, for the most basic code, and thank you for a lot of other stuff, but no thank you on getting me to a point where then I had to invest a ton of time perfecting the script. So after 5 million rolls, I don't know what I was looking for out of this crap data, but pretty interesting stuff and hopefully enough for you to have some confidence if you ever wanted to try this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. And if you like this, please hit that subscribe button. I hope to see you in the next one.